Welcome in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us as we are underway here on the Thursday edition of the program. Lots of fun coming to be had, hopefully, by all. I'm out here in the Valley of the Sun in Phoenix, Super Bowl week. Love it out here. This is one of my favorite cities in America. Met a lot of fantastic listeners all over the place already. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to dive into. My good buddy Buck Sexton, recently married and now officially off on his honeymoon. I'll have you for the rest of this week and next week as he is going to be kicking it off in the South Pacific with his lovely wife, Carrie. So let's have some fun. We'll open up phone lines. We'll take a lot of calls. Our only guest so far today is the newest senator from Missouri, Eric Schmidt. We're going to talk some about what revelations were uncovered yesterday in what I thought was a really impressive hearing in the House surrounding all of the censorship, the big tech collusion. I will talk about it. We'll play cuts. If you haven't been paying attention to it or haven't heard it talked about in a significant way, it is a monster story. I believe the biggest story by far. It makes Watergate seem like jaywalking. Biggest story that has occurred involving the government and certainly big tech collusion and the Democrat Party in any of our lives. And they are effectively dead to rights. Twitter is just one example of all that big tech collusion that's been going on. But I want to start with what I thought was a really interesting juxtaposition that shows how wins can happen, the significance of choices, and why you can't be afraid sometimes to take on big battles. And in particular, I'm talking about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Walt Disney, and how woke the Disney Corporation has become over the past several years. And let me just kind of give you a background here. When I was a kid, we would go and stay in a camper at Fort Wilderness Disney World, for those of you who have ever been there. And our family vacations were we would drive down. Mom and Dad would put us in the station wagon, my sister and I. We would drive down to Walt Disney World. We would stay there in a camper, and we would go to Disney World. We would go to Epcot. I bet there are a lot of you out there listening right now who also had similar family vacations. And I remember my dad, he keeps all the receipts and everything else. Recently we were talking, I believe it was $14 to camp every day at Disney World. And it was insanely affordable to get into the parks. You could be, as I was, a middle-class kid from Nashville, Tennessee, and your parents could afford to take you to Disney World, and it didn't break your bank. It now costs sometimes $200 a day plus to be able to go to Disney World. A family of four, like I was when I was a kid, could go and stay at Disney World and spend $1,000 easily in one day when you talk about food and drink and just the cost of getting into the parks. And one reason they've been spending so much money, costing you so much money to go to these parks, and why it has accelerated at 7 and 8 times the cost of inflation, right? When I was a kid growing up, 1980s, cost not that much in the grand scheme of things to go to Disney World, to camp out, to stay at the Fort Wilderness. And now it is beyond the reach of many middle-class families to even be able to go to Disney World. And, of course, for Walt Disney himself, it's not only the cost, I think, that would have him rolling over in his grave. It's the fact that his company has embraced fundamentally anti-American values. And many people out there say, well, what do you want to do? That's just the market. What can you possibly do? And I'm fired up about this because I came out of the world of sports, and I've seen the woke Disney agenda take over in the world of sports as well. And what they are doing is creating a culture of anti-Americanism. And I just want to play for you a cut from a show that is out there right now that is on Disney Plus. I don't know how in the world they ever made this decision. This is a new episode of Disney's The Proud Family reboot. All right, this is on an episode entitled Juneteenth. This is what that episode sounds like. This is Disney Plus. This is something that your kids could be watching. Listen.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. Tilled this land from sea to sea to sea. First there was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Fighting for America's freedoms, even though we remained America's slaves. Built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build it. Slaves built this country. And we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering. And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still has not atoned for. Slaves built this country. We made your families rich. From the southern plantation heirs to the northern bankers to the New England ship owners, the founding fathers, former presidents, current senators,
the Illuminati, the New World Order.
Slaves built this country.
All right. That ain't Peter Pan. That's not Snow White. I bet if you have not heard that, your jaw is dropping. This is Disney. Your kids are being propagandized. They are being told that America is an awful place. It's not the Hall of Presidents. It's not Main Street USA. This is not the Disney that Walt Disney created. This is not the Disney probably that you grew up with if you're around my age. If you grew up in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, it's a fundamentally different company. Yesterday, and I don't think this is a coincidence, Disney announced their earnings. They've brought back their CEO, Bob Iger, and he announced that they were laying off 7,000 employees. 7,000. I feel bad for those employees. Some of you may be listening who are going to lose your jobs because guess what? The vast majority of Disney employees hear a clip like that and they're in disbelief that their company is creating propaganda for kids to air, such as what I just played for you. And 7,000 employees they're laying off. Guys, they have lost $9 billion. That's billion with a B on this new streaming Disney Plus service. They're now going to have to rein back in the amount of content that they are going to create. I talked with you on this show a few weeks ago. They shut down a ride at Disney World called Splash Mountain because it's connected to Brer Rabbit, which comes out of a Joel Chandler Harris stories, the Uncle Remus character that was in African-American folklore, was where Brer Rabbit comes out of in the 1880s. They said that the amusement park ride was racist, so they had to shut it down. Well, wait a minute. If you're upset with racism, how about the clip that I just played you? How about the clip that is demanding reparations on a children's show and saying that America is systemically racist and that every white person is responsible for it? Your 6-year-old didn't have a lot to do with racism. I'm just going to toss that out, whether your 6-year-old is white, black, Asian, or Hispanic. None of us are responsible for the decisions made hundreds of years ago. So the win here, so that's all the losses, right? It's very frustrating. Incredibly such. Ron DeSantis stood up to Disney. Remember last year when Ron DeSantis said, wait a minute, Disney, in the wake of Disney weighing in and saying, we think that your kids should be taught in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade about sexuality. You know, the Florida came out and said they tried to brand it the Don't Say Gay bill, and most people said, you know what? I've got a second grader right now, but I don't really think he needs gender affirmation discussion. I don't really think we need to have detailed discussions about sexuality. And then the data started to come out, and everybody agreed with Ron DeSantis, and Disney had painted itself into a corner. Disney didn't reach their streaming goals. A lot of people are choosing not to buy into their propaganda. They're firing 7,000 people. They've lost $9 billion on streaming. And Ron DeSantis is holding them accountable for their woke Disney agenda. Last year, a lot of the left-wingers came out and they said, well, this is going to be the end of Ron DeSantis. He took on Disney. Disney's the biggest employer in his state. Disney's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You don't win in Florida by taking on Disney. DeSantis did the exact opposite of what everybody told him he should do. He said, no, this is unacceptable. I'm going to play that clip for you again later in this show because some of you out there are like, oh, my goodness, we have to see this. We'll put it up on clayandbuck.com. I mean, this is outrageous. And so Ron DeSantis took on Disney last year. And I just want you to think about what's happened in the last year since DeSantis took on Disney. DeSantis has come back and won the biggest re-election in the state of Florida's history for a Republican governor. He won by 19 points. The CEO at Disney, Bob Chapek, who was responsible for the woke Disney agenda, got fired. Disney is now announcing that they are laying off 7,000 people, and they're backpedaling in a big way over their woke agenda. Bob Iger, the new CEO, is trying desperately to avoid all politics. This is how you win. And more importantly, this is strong evidence that there is a huge and quiet and silent, often, far too often, unfortunately, majority out there that hears all of this woke Disney BS and is flat out fed up with it. And I think that so many Republicans out there are so afraid of being targeted that you're standing for nothing. And as I watched those earnings come out yesterday from Disney, and as I thought about the past year and the way that Ron DeSantis, who, by the way, is around my age and grew up in Disney, I bet, grew up in Florida, grew up going to Disney World. I bet a lot of you out there listening feel the exact same way. This we cannot stand for. The culture that is being spread even by our companies that ostensibly want to speak to our children, that America is awful and that our history is something to be ashamed of, and that for God's sakes your 6-year-old can't watch a cartoon on Disney without being told that he or she is responsible for reparations, and that there's so many victims in this country that no one can be proud of the greatest country and the least racist country, frankly, that has ever existed in the history of the United States. It is symptomatic of the rot that exists in this country right now, that we can go from Main Street USA under Walt Disney, the Hall of Presidents, to Disney itself putting out that crap that I played for you and shutting down rides because they decide that an amusement park ride is racist. We have to stand up against this cultural rot. We absolutely cannot allow it to continue. The woke Disney agenda is cancer for your kids and this country, and the market is sending a clear message. The Ron DeSantises of the world, the Clay Travises of the world, the moms and dads out there listening to me right now have had enough, and there have to be consequences for woke decision-making, racist decision-making made by the Disney Corporation. Unfortunately, 7,000 people are going to lose their jobs because their leadership has gone so far beyond the pale. Going to open up phone lines. 800-282-2882. You guys can react to all of this. And I appreciate, as I said, you guys all hanging out with me as we are rolling through in the program here for the rest of the day. One guest, Eric Schmidt, I'll ask him about this, by the way. I bet he also agrees with the need to stand up basically to the bully and be willing to really take a stand and be willing to fight. Not just to say, well, we're not going to really say anything about that. We'll continue to break this down. In the meantime, Buck tells you about this podcast nearly every day. Great new device called the Mantis X that helps gun owners keep their skills sharp. Mantis X is a firearms training system, no ammo, all electronic way to improve your shooting accuracy. Many of the best shooters do the majority of the training this way, which is called dry fire training. It attaches to your firearm like a weapon light. You can use it at home or at the range instead of expensive ammunition. And for you gun owners out there, you know how expensive ammo's become. This is a cost-efficient alternative training method with great results. The Mantis X gives you data-driven, real-time feedback on your technique and guides you through drills and courses. 94% of shooters improve within 20 minutes of using Mantis X. This product now being used by the U.S. military and special forces, military-grade technology at an affordable price. The Mantis X is a must-have for every gun owner. Start improving your shooting accuracy today. Get yours at mantisx.com. That's MANTISX.com. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Tons of reaction rolling in to the clip that I played for you of what I think fairly can be called woke Disney programming that is attempting to convince your kids that America's history is awful and they are responsible for racism and that there's no way that anyone can succeed because we're so enraptured by the victim culture that has been created in this country and why it's important to fight back. But I also wanted to play you, I believe we have a cut of Disney CEO Bob Iger announcing that he's laying off 7,000 people, which I think is directly related to Disney having lost its way. Listen.
We are targeting $5.5 billion of cost savings across the company. To help achieve this, we will be reducing our workforce by approximately 7,000 jobs. While this is necessary to address the challenges we're facing today, I do not make this decision lightly. I have enormous respect and appreciation for the talent and dedication of our employees worldwide, and I'm mindful of the personal impact of these changes.
Okay, so guy who is worth hundreds of millions of dollars is going to lay off a lot of people, probably making $50,000 because he and his compatriots inside of Disney have made poor business decisions and alienated a huge segment of the American public. And sometimes the market has to work. And I really do believe that DeSantis standing up to Disney is evidence of the market working. Because so many times you've probably been told this yourself. Oh, what can we do? How can we respond to a company like this? Look, if you get woke enough, you go broke. Your business will collapse. And these, what I would call Trojan horse warriors inside of companies, this is important for a lot of people out there who listen to us and own businesses. You can't let these diversity and inclusion fanatics into your business because they are basically arriving Trojan horse style. Oh, we're going to make everything better. And what they end up doing is destroying the essence of your business itself. And I believe that's what's happened at Disney. How else does the clip that I played for you get greenlit in any way? And I'm going to play that clip for you again. I want everybody to be able to react to it. And we come back at the next segment, 8-282-2882. If you want to call in, 800-282-2882. You can react as well. You can send emails with the VIP. In the meantime, business owners, you've had it really tough over the past several years. You could probably use a break. If your business has 5 or more employees managed to make it through COVID, you could be eligible to receive a payroll tax rebate of up to $26,000 per employee. Now listen, not alone, no payback, just a refund of your taxes. Great attorneys that are experts in this field. No cost to you. They have brought back over $3 billion to businesses at getrefunds.com. They can hook you up as well. All you need to do is go to getrefunds.com, click on Qualify Me, answer a few questions. Payroll tax refund only available for a limited amount of time. Don't miss out. Getrefunds.com. No risk, high reward. No risk, again, high reward. Getrefunds.com. Go check it out today. Getrefunds.com. Welcome back in. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show, talking about the fallout of woke Disney and all of the impact that is out there right now in the wake of 7,000 layoffs, $9 billion lost to streaming, and the first CEO out, return of a new CEO, and, of course, Ron DeSantis winning by 19 points and effectively having the people of Florida stamp him as the winner in the battle between DeSantis and Walt Disney. And frankly, Walt Disney would probably, if he were alive today, be saying, I can't believe this is my perspective, but the company that I founded, rooted in the greatness of American exceptionalism, has so lost its way that I agree with the governor who is ripping my own company. I think that's what Walt Disney would say. If Walt Disney were alive today, he would not recognize the crazy, ridiculous company that he has created. And I just want to play this for you again. because this is what they are selling to your kids, your grandkids. This is what Disney Plus is putting out there. Again, I heard this and my jaw dropped. The video of this we will post on clayandbuck.com so that you can actually see this for yourself. And it's just important to be aware what your kids are being exposed to, what trash is out there. This is the Proud Family. And, Buck and I talk about this sometimes. Do you give more publicity to things like this by sharing them? Right? I mean, I think that's one of the questions that always hangs out there when you become aware of woke programming like this. And there are people out there who would say, oh, just ignore it. Don't draw attention to it. I think that's what the Republican Party's been doing for far too long. And I think DeSantis set an important example. And certainly I've been doing this in my media career for a long time. When there are things like this that are produced and are so toxic, particularly when it is intended for young kids to consume who may not know any better. I mean, just think about the difference between Peter Pan, Cinderella, Bambi. Bambi was tough, not going to lie. But the programming that Walt Disney created, the movies, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that he created that made Disney one of the most iconic brands in the history of basically world capitalism, world globalism, that this could be the result, the Proud Family reboot. Listen to this anti-white propaganda that is now being spread by woke Disney.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. Tilled this land from sea to sea to sea. First there was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Fighting for America's freedoms, even though we remained America's slaves. Built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build this. Slaves built this country. And we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering. And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still has not atoned for. Slaves built this country. We made your families rich. From the southern plantation heirs to the northern bankers to the New England ship owners, the founding fathers, former presidents, current senators,
The Illuminati, the New World Order.
slaves built this country.
Current senators are racist. I mean, I hear that, and I cannot believe what is actually going on here. And when you actually break all this down, it's only getting worse if you don't stand up to it. Here's an easy way that I would tell a lot of you can make a difference. The big challenge from a business perspective is on these streaming companies. If you really pay attention to when new shows are released, you only have to subscribe to a streaming company 1 month or 2 months out of the year. Right? You can if you like shows, let's say you like Disney Plus. If there are a couple of shows that you like and that your kids enjoy, you can sign up and subscribe, watch whatever the new shows are in a month or two, cancel the subscription. That's one of the things they're finding out about streaming is it's so easy to cancel subscriptions that it's not a great business. Right? If you had cable or satellite, as I'm sure many of you do, it's comparatively difficult to cancel a cable or satellite subscription. Somebody has to come out. There's technicians involved. There's all sorts of mechanisms that are involved in that process. It's really easy to cancel a streaming service. You just heard that clip. I don't think there's any harm at all in saying, hey, I might still consume Disney programming occasionally, but we're going to take a 6-month break. And we'll decide whether we want to have Disney Plus going forward based on whether they apologize for putting filth like this into the streaming universe that's designed to be watched by kids. I don't think that's a bad move at all. You can reserve the right to return when choices that are more appropriate are made for kids. It's not like you have to have some grand gesture and you're gone forever. The $14 or $15 a month that Disney's not going to get from you for the next 6 months over this programming would be pretty significant. I don't think it's a bad move at all. Mark in Maine, what do you think? You canceled your Disney Plus service?
Morning, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, I did. I'm a proud father, and I canceled my service because of that show and the Eternals. But, I want to tell people, don't just cancel. You're right. It is easy to cancel. I called them and I let them know exactly why I canceled the specific shows and the things that I saw on the shows that they were pushing is why I canceled. Now, they didn't have a whole lot to say to me. They kept kind of active listening. Yep. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. Yep. But still, if you call them, they record it and they document it. And I think that it may have a bit more of an impact.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. And you're right. You're not. I mean, let's be honest. You're talking to somebody in customer service. It's not like you're talking to somebody at a high level of Disney. But when they put out programming like this, and thanks for the call, there should be consequences. There should be economic consequences when your kids are being propagandized to this degree by companies like Disney. And the message that gets sent to Disney, make no mistake about it, also goes to many other entertainment companies out there because they look around and say, whoa, if this can happen to Disney, if Disney can be in the process of losing $9 billion, that's billion with a B, since they started their Disney Plus service, and very few people are talking about this. A lot of people are captured by the Disney apparatus out there. $9 billion they have lost so far in their streaming service. And when you hear programming like that, I think a lot of you out there say, maybe they need to lose more. Maybe that's what has to happen to Disney in order for them to recognize that the overwhelming majority of American parents do not support this crap that they're putting out there for kids to consume. I think that is a massively important message to send. And it's the very essence of capitalism. If people produce things that you like, you spend money on their product. If they don't spend money, don't produce product that you like, you don't spend your money. Why would you endorse in any way that programming that I just played for you? And Disney is starting to reap what they have sowed. 7,000 people getting laid off. CEO lost his job. Ron DeSantis wins by 19 points in Florida. The people of Florida voted. The people of America are voting. And they are coming down on the side of, we just want Disney programming. We want Peter Pan. We want Cinderella. We want, even in the early 90s, Beauty and the Beast. Normal movies that kids out there, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, can all enjoy, and that you can sit your kid down in front of and feel good about watching. How much programming that Disney's making right now is like what I just played for you? Toxic, anti-white, racist. I mean, they're canceling amusement park rides and then telling you that America is an awful, telling your kids that America is an awful racist place and reparations are necessary, that your kids are responsible for slavery because they happen to be born white. It's pure madness. Walt Disney himself would be rolling over in his grave if he knew what his company was going to turn into. And there need to be consequences. So I'd encourage all of you out there, go check out this clip. Make sure that your kids, maybe they're busy. They've got your grandkids to take care of. They're not paying attention on a day-to-day basis to everything that's being watched on these programs. So busy. I know. I've got 3 young kids. It's hard to be on top of everything. It's important to send messages. I'd encourage anybody out there right now, heard that clip, cancel Disney Plus for the next 6 months. Come back in 6 months. They got new programming. Maybe they will have adjusted their behavior. Make it hurt their pocketbook when they make poor choices. If your goal in 2023 is doing business with people and companies, here's a good one, that see the world your way, start with your cell phone service. Switch to Pure Talk. Company aligned with your values. They're proudly veteran-owned. They proudly employ a U.S.-based customer service team. Same company refuses to spend their money on fake news. Pure Talk will give you great cell phone service on one of the largest networks in the country. You're going to get blazing fast data, talk, text for just $30 a month, probably half what you're paying Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. You can keep your phone, keep your same phone number, switch over in as little as 10 minutes. Plus, Pure Talk has a first-month risk-free guarantee. Try it. If you're not completely happy with your Pure Talk service, you'll get your money back. Support a company who supports you and your values. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We are rolling through the Thursday edition of the program. I encourage you to go subscribe to the podcast. Tons of awesome, unique offerings there that you will not find anywhere else. In addition to the show itself, you can break it down by hour, which is pretty phenomenal. Tens of millions of you are downloading the podcast every single month and throughout the year, and we appreciate all of you. Certainly, we appreciate everybody out there who is listening, including all of you in the Valley of the Sun in the Phoenix area, where I am broadcasting today, tomorrow, and Monday out here for Super Bowl week. Big day, big week in Phoenix. I love this city. But for those of you out there who are sports fans, we got the Super Bowl going on. And then we've got the Waste Management Open, which is an awesome golf event. And late last night, the Phoenix Suns traded for Kevin Durant, who is one of the best players in the NBA. So is this potentially the greatest week in sports week in Phoenix history? I don't think there's that many things that would be in contention based on everything that's going on. So I'm having a fantastic time out here. Our staff tracked down another clip of this woke Disney infestation. And evidently this is one of the women who was responsible for that racist young kid-focused show that I'm playing you a clip from. Here she is arguing that she's going to use Disney shows to basically infest those shows for kids with incredibly left-wing, anti-family propaganda. Listen.
I'd heard things like, oh, they won't let you show this at a Disney show. And I'm like, okay. But then my experience was bafflingly the opposite of what I had heard. The showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. And so I don't have to be afraid to let's have these two characters kiss. Let's in the background. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud family. But I just was no one would stop me and no one was trying to stop me.
Okay. So using Disney programming to put in demands for reparations and really sex-based programming that doesn't have any basis for young children. They're telling you and bragging exactly what they are doing. And this is just so significant because I think that Disney is a lesson. A lot of you who listen to me own businesses. And at some point, if your business gets big enough, you have an HR person, and then you've got somebody who comes in and says, our hiring practices are not diverse enough. We need a diversity and inclusion expert. And I'm thinking about this recently because I was reading Phil Knight, who founded Nike, really wildly successful American business. And Phil Knight was supporting Christine Drazan in the Oregon primary out there, in the Oregon election then as well, the Republican candidate. And they came after him, I believe, in the New York Times, talking about the fact that he was supporting a Republican. And he said, well, Nike's actually way more left-wing than I am. And I'm paraphrasing that quote. But as someone who owned a media business that I sold to Fox, my antenna just went up. I can't think of much worse than creating a business that is an American success story because it appeals to everyone, like a Walt Disney or a Phil Knight. And then people who are mostly not very talented come in and take over the culture of your company and make it a woke-ified version of a business that actually makes your business less successful than it would be if the business just went out and tried to appeal to everyone. And I think you have to be very careful if you own a business that you don't let these people in Trojan horse style. Oh, we're coming in to make everything better. We're a gift to the company. And then the Trojan horse opens up and they destroy your culture from the inside. Because make no mistake, I think that's happened at Disney. I think to a large extent it's happened at Nike. But they are just representative samples of the woke virus destroying this country from the inside. It's not a coincidence that the Chinas of the world have the same opinion about America being awful as many of the people working inside of these corporations. China is aware, I really do believe this, that they can't attack America externally. They don't have the might at the present moment. But they can attack us from the inside. They're trying to use the openness of our society and the openness of our culture to destroy us. And many of these companies are totally allowing it, opening it up, letting this Trojan horse diversity and inclusion culture in. Next thing you know, your kids are being lectured that they're awful because they're white and they're responsible for reparations while they're trying to watch a show for program for kids. It's toxic. Cancel those subscriptions. I think all of you should. Make Disney learn what happens when they make poor market choices, just like Ron DeSantis. What's going on with Twitter? Why was yesterday's hearing so important? I'll tell you next. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Going to talk here in a little bit. We're scheduled to be joined by Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt to talk about the explosive hearings going on surrounding everything relating to Twitter. And this is important. And I did a really big deep dive with Miranda Devine of the New York Post. You can find it in the podcast. And it's podcast exclusive, long form interview with Miranda Devine discussing the New York Post and everything about the censorship surrounding the Hunter Biden laptop story. And I think it's super important because it's easy to get lost in all of the details and not recognize the essence of what's important. So I just want to hit you with the essence of this story, and then I'm going to play several cuts from this Twitter hearing and explain to you why it matters so much. So here is, if we were standing in front of a jury, and I always think about this back from practicing law, the person who tells the best story wins. Almost every trial. The law matters, but people respond to story. So if you're one of the 12 jurors sitting over there, and two people are telling a story, the person who tells the best story is almost always going to win in virtually every case. And so here is how I would convey to a jury of the American public why what happened with Twitter and with the New York Post is so incredibly important, and what you need to know as essential information without getting lost in all the weeds and all the details and everything else. This is the story distilled in its essence. In December of 2019, the FBI seized Hunter Biden's laptop from John Paul McIsaac, a Delaware computer repairman who had been holding that laptop for months, and Hunter Biden had not returned to claim that laptop. There was on the laptop that was handed to the FBI in December of 2019 evidence of substantial criminal wrongdoing by Hunter Biden and also his father, Joe Biden. December of 2019, the FBI gets that laptop. During 2020, due to trumped-up allegations, the FBI is able to get a search warrant effectively without Rudy Giuliani knowing it to monitor all of Rudy Giuliani's transmissions, all of his cloud, basically, of text messages, of emails, all of that. And in that process, which is wild to think about, in that process, they become aware that Rudy Giuliani has got a copy of the Hunter Biden laptop data because John Paul McIsaac made his own copy because he didn't trust the FBI that they would do something with it. So after nearly a year of the FBI doing nothing, John Paul McIsaac reaches out to Rudy Giuliani and says, hey, you need to see all the stuff on this Hunter Biden laptop. The FBI is aware of that communication. They're aware that Rudy Giuliani has possession, eventually, of the things on the laptop. And they are aware that Rudy Giuliani is talking to the New York Post and other media outlets, trying to get those outlets to write a story about the Hunter Biden laptop. As a result, they're aware when the New York Post is about to publish, and they are out there talking to Twitter and Facebook and all the big tech companies, letting them know that this story is coming and that it may well be Russian disinformation. What's important here is someone at the FBI, maybe it's Christopher Wray, maybe it's someone below Christopher Wray's rank, someone at the FBI knew that this laptop was 100% authentic because they had had it since December of 2019, knew that Rudy Giuliani had copies of it, knew that there were stories coming about this laptop and its authenticity, and decided that they wanted to help Joe Biden get elected by providing cover to argue that it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew that it was real. Someone at the FBI, and this is the essence, someone at the FBI made the decision to cover up the authenticity of this laptop, even though they knew it was real, and to help ensure that Joe Biden was elected president as a result. That's it. Where we can talk about Twitter and we can talk about Facebook, and there's no doubt that they were rigged. But if you put yourself in the perspective of a random guy or girl who works at Twitter or Facebook, if the FBI is briefing you, telling you that Russians are trying to rig the election, you're probably going to believe it. You're just a 27 or 28-year-old employee who is being directly briefed by the FBI. Imagine that the FBI comes to your place of business when you're in your 20s and tells you that a crime's about to occur. Most of us would say, oh, you know what? The FBI knows what they're talking about. That's exactly what they did. But somebody at the FBI ordered the code red. Somebody in our nation's top law enforcement federal organization rigged the election. They're in Joe Biden's pocket. Who? Who made that choice? And how do we still not know over 2 years later? Again, the simple facts. They had the laptop, the FBI did, for almost a year before the New York Post story came out. They knew it was real. Yet they decided to brief all these big tech companies and tell them that Russian misinformation was going to be coming surrounding the laptop. Someone at the FBI knew this was real and ordered the code red. That's what we need to uncover. That's the person who is most criminally culpable. That's the person who should be in prison right now. And this is important. Now, look, I want to play a couple of cuts for you here. Clay Higgins, a Republican congressman from Louisiana, he tells Twitter executives to prepare to be arrested for criminal interference in the 2020 election. I appreciate that. I think Twitter certainly behaved in a manner, many employees at Twitter did, that there should be consequences. But what I'm telling you is these Twitter employees are further down the food chain. What we need to know is who at the FBI ordered the code red. But listen to cut 3 here.
Bottom line is that the FBI had the Biden crime family laptop for a year. They knew it was leaking. They knew it would hurt the Biden campaign. So the FBI used its relationship with Twitter to suppress criminal evidence being revealed about Joe Biden 1 month before the 2020 elections. You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part.
Okay, I hope that there are criminal prosecutions in this case. But the Twitter people are stooges. They're patsies. They're not particularly intelligent tech executives who were in favor of Democrats and were particularly susceptible to believe that the Russians were trying to elect Donald Trump in 2020. But the FBI played them. These Twitter stooges are just the puppets. They're just dancing. Who's the puppet master? Who inside of our government, being paid by your tax dollars, who at the FBI ordered the code red? How do we still not know? There are people at the FBI who were high enough up. Maybe there's multiple people. Maybe there's 7 or 8. Maybe there's only one who allowed this to occur, who planned it, who plotted it, who intentionally attempted to influence the election in favor of Joe Biden and succeeded in doing so. We have the evidence that it happened at Twitter. We have the evidence that it happened at Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. That's important. But going after these guys is like going after the low-level foot soldiers. The person or people who pulled the threads, the puppet masters, the people who ordered the code red. So much as we know, they're still inside the FBI. They got away with it. They rigged the 2020 election. They intentionally spread falsehoods that they knew were falsehoods. And we still don't know who they are. So as much as I love what the Republicans are doing in having this hearing in the House, many of them and many of their staffs listen to this show. What we need to know is who made this happen. That is the person who remains a threat to our government. And frankly, if you want to talk about democracy dying in darkness, that is the person who is the biggest threat or people to our democracy. They rigged the 2020 election based on known lies in favor of Joe Biden. And you think they're going to impart equal justice now? And you think they're going to be fair and impartial as we get ready for the 2024 election? Don't get lost in going after stooges when there is a puppet master in our government pulling the strings who put Joe Biden in office. Who is it? Who are these people? How did that happen? That's the question that has to be asked. We know it happened. We have all the evidence from inside of big tech, and I love having all of these Twitter employees grilled and held accountable for their clear biases, but these are little people. These are the guys that were dancing at the behest of the puppet master. Who inside of our government made this happen? That's the question that everybody should be asking. And that's the question that I want us to uncover, that frankly, we must uncover. All right, we're going to come back. I'll open up phone lines, 800-282-2882. Going to continue to take your calls. We've got a lot to discuss, potentially at the bottom of the hour. Eric Schmidt, senator from Missouri. I'll ask him the same question I just asked you guys. And again, so many people out there listening to this show right now work on Capitol Hill. A lot of you are doing the lion's work here. But we have to figure out who ordered the code red? That's the question now. We know it was ordered. We know it happened. Don't go after the puppet. We need the puppet master, not the puppets. Mike Lindell and his MyPillow products have made sleeping a whole lot more comfortable. That was before the debut of the MyPillow 2.0. You're about to level up your sleep with a brand new pillow. We have these in the Travis household. They arrived right before I left to come out to Phoenix. MyPillow 2.0, same adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, made it such a hit. Now includes temperature regulating technology. You can say goodbye to tossing, turning, flipping your pillow over during the night. Say hello to MyPillow 2.0. Right now, you can buy one, get one free for a limited time with our names as the promo code Clay and Buck. 100% made in the USA. MyPillow 2.0 comes with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Level up your sleep with the MyPillow 2.0. Go to MyPillow.com. Click on the radio listener special square to get this buy one, get one free offer on the MyPillow 2.0. Enter the promo code Clay and Buck. You can also call 800-792-3269 to get your MyPillow 2.0 now. MyPillow 2.0. Do it today. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us, trying to figure out who the puppet master is. It's also important to recognize that a lot of people inside of Twitter are just not very smart, and they're trying to apply rules that are very difficult to apply in terms of moderation. And there were definitely some fireworks here of Twitter being called out over its moderation policies. Again, I think this is less significant than who the puppet master is inside of the FBI trying to rig the election successfully, I might add. That's the question that should be and is the most essential to be answered. Who knew the laptop was real and yet allowed the FBI to be conducting a lot of these briefings claiming that the laptop was not real? But they also, of course, as we well know, censored people who ended up being 100% right about a large majority of the stories that are out there surrounding COVID, which is also important. Again, less important because now Elon Musk owns the company and the protocols are starting to change, and those are important things. But we still need to know puppet master. But I do wanted to play Nancy Mace from South Carolina went off on Twitter execs over a blacklist of COVID policy critics.
Where did you go to medical school?
I did not go to medical school.
I'm sorry?
I did not go to medical school.
That's what I thought. Why do you think you or anyone else at Twitter had the medical expertise to censor a doctor's expert opinion?
Our policies regarding COVID were designed to protect individuals. We were seeing...
You guys censored Harvard-educated doctors, Stanford-educated doctors, doctors that are educated in the best places in the world, and you silenced those voices. It's not just about the laptop. This is about medical advice that expert doctors were trying to give Americans because social media companies like Twitter were silencing their voices.
It's important. It's downstream, right, from the big question, which is who at the FBI ordered the rig job that led to Joe Biden being put in office? Because theoretically, those people are still person or people, larger group, we don't know, are still in positions of power and may well try to rig things for Joe Biden again. And certainly we know the FBI is not holding Hunter Biden accountable, despite the fact that they've now had his laptop. We're entering into, the fourth year of the FBI being in possession of the Hunter Biden laptop. It ain't that complicated of an investigation. They've had it since December of 19. We're now into February of 23. I also want to play for you. Here is Lauren Boebert going off about Twitter banning her. Listen.
You suppressed my account for this tweet. It's a freaking joke about Hillary Clinton being angry that she couldn't rig her election. It's a joke. But in response, being the sinister overlords that you all are, you placed a 90-day account filter so I could not be found. And now we see here that Twitter staff said the visibility filter on my account excluded me from top searches, prevented notifications for non-followers, and much more. This is considered an aggressive visibility filter. You silenced me from communicating with the American people over a freaking joke. Now, who the hell do you think that you are?
I love it. I love the fiery nature. I love Twitter being held accountable. But again, this is all downstream. Who ordered the code red? That's the question Republicans should be asking. That's the one that matters the most as we continue to go forward. There's a whole generation growing up there out there that knows little to nothing about 9/11. Only 2 states mandate kindergarten to 12th grade learning. Think about that. Just 2 states. That's why Tunnel to Towers 9/11 Institute's giving educators access to nonfiction 9/11 resources for grades K to 12. Full curriculum units built around first-person accounts, scripted social studies lessons, activities, backgrounds for teachers, plus nonfiction Discovering Heroes series of books with their accompanying curriculum units. Also, a speakers bureau with access to 9/11 first responders, survivors, and loved ones. Lastly, a mobile exhibit, which is a high-tech 83-foot tractor-trailer that turns into an 1,100-square-foot interactive museum with 9/11 artifacts. You can learn more about all of these at t2t.org. To never forget, we must educate future generations. Join Buck and myself, $11 a month, t2t.org, t2t.org. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. I hope all of you are having fabulous Thursdays, wherever you are across this great country. We've got the newest senator from Missouri, Eric Schmidt, with us, who I believe just came from a classified briefing about the Chinese spy balloon. I presume you can't tell us a lot about that. But Senator Schmidt, do you think this was a one-time incursion across the length of our country? Do you think the government should change its policy as it pertains to these Chinese spy balloons? Not asking you to tell us what you were briefed on, but just the larger context here.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to take from this. One is this is an incredibly brazen move by the Chinese here to actually have a spy balloon, and it sounds ridiculous to even say a Chinese spy balloon, right? Traversing over the continental United States, including places like missile silos, and in Missouri, Whiteman Air Force Base, which is the home of the B-2 stealth bomber, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency in the St. Louis area. I mean, this wasn't just a drift, right? They knew exactly what they were doing. I think they were also, in addition to the intelligence that they were gathering as this took place, they were also gathering really important intelligence on Joe Biden and how he reacts to these kinds of situations. And that is very concerning to me because there's just no way this should have happened. This thing should have been shot down, over the Aleutian Islands well before there was any concern about shooting it down, near a populated area, which obviously is a big concern. So there's just a number of failures here, Clay, that it just is incredibly troubling. My hope here is that I think this is how the American people feel about this. There is a renewed desire, I hope, to really view China for what it is, which is our chief adversary. We are in a competition with them. They're being very aggressive. This was just the most recent attempt of those sort of aggressive moves. And this is coming on the heels of a president that withdrew from Afghanistan, looked weak on the world stage. Servicemen died, tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment's left behind, and refuses to do anything to secure our southern border. And now we have obviously an incursion into U.S. airspace. So these are serious issues, right? And they're coming to light, but we better come together on this and have a renewed focus on China.
So do you think China is setting it up to invade Taiwan? And if so, would they be more encouraged to invade Taiwan based on the fact that we just let them fly a spy balloon across the entire country and really didn't do anything? In other words, our response, I think it's fair to say, was quite weak.
It's hard to believe that they're somehow more concerned about our response after this than they were before. I mean, I just don't think anybody with a half a brain would believe that they're somehow more intimidated by how the United States reacts to these kinds of situations. I think they have a number of ways that they'd like to get Taiwan back under their control. One is to try to affect some of the elections that are coming up, but obviously this is a concern. I mean, they believe it's part of China, and Taiwan is an independent state. So this is, all setting up for this to be a big focus for the United States and for the world. And so I just think it's very concerning. I think it's hard to overstate how bold this was, right? To have a spy balloon floating over critical military installations in the continental United States, the lower 48. It's pretty shocking. And Joe Biden, failed every single one of the tests that were presented him here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think, as you rightly said, we said it on the radio, as soon as this became clear that it was in our territory, I don't understand how the immediate response wasn't to shoot it down, particularly because many of the states it was flying over had ample space where there was no, massive population center that was potentially going to be threatened, or even a population center hardly at all, certainly in Alaska, as you mentioned. When you hear some of these stories, it appears the Biden administration was kind of hoping nobody would notice this spy balloon, right? And only because it became visible to the naked eye in Montana did this story even start to go into circulation. There's now also a report out there from, I believe, the London Times that the Biden administration might have been involved in sabotaging one of the pipelines over in Europe. Are you concerned? And I know that happened, the explosion in the European pipeline happened before you got into the Senate. But are you concerned about the transparency that is being provided to politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, right now by the Biden administration?
Yes, on every issue that you just mentioned there, Clay, this is a big concern. And this comes to, the constitutional duty for oversight by the Article 1 branch, the legislature, right? The Congress is supposed to have oversight. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, the bipartisan Select Committee on Intelligence, Republicans and Democrats, were stonewalled by folks in that committee about what they're discovering through these top secret documents that are being uncovered in every residence that Joe Biden's ever had for the last 50 years, right? That's not how this is supposed to work. And I do think it speaks to a larger issue that you and I have talked about before, Clay. We have to be laser-like focused. I would hope this isn't just a partisan issue. It shouldn't be. But for me, it's a focus as I enter the Senate here, and I'm going to be like a bulldog on this. We have to fundamentally dismantle the administrative state. It is antithetical to who we are as a country, self-government, where you could send people there, send them home, send them back. It's all based on the idea that somebody's accountable. We have reached a point now where so many of these bureaucrats who are unelected and unaccountable to anybody make these decisions and don't feel like they have to answer for them. And this really hurts the American people. It's how you get to 87,000 IRS agents. It's how you get to a place where some unelected guy from the EPA is telling you got to shut down your farm. It's how you end up with ESG, which is going to do the same thing. It's going to cut off domestic energy supply. All these folks have been emboldened, and you can't vote for them. And we've got to get to a place where Congress is voting on this stuff, because none of this stuff would actually ever happen. If they want to propose a new rule, pull back 10, whatever the number is, we've got to have structural reform here, because that is the underlying issue for all of this.
We're talking to Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt. You've been very instrumental in being involved in the big tech collusion and the rig job that's been going on associated with censorship and allowing a true marketplace of ideas to exist. I'm sure you paid attention some to the House hearing on Twitter and the New York Post story and everything else, and certainly you've been involved in lawsuits that have helped to uncover many of these documents. I was just talking to start off the second hour of the program here about as much attention as we should give to Twitter and Facebook. Facebook, by the way, has now allowed Donald Trump to be back on Facebook. They've given him back his account. That report coming down about 15 minutes ago. Shouldn't we be focused most of all on who inside of the FBI was making the decision to brief these big tech companies on the possibility of Hunter Biden laptop Russian misinformation, when we know the FBI had the laptop and knew it was real? In other words, it's good to focus on Twitter and Facebook, and there's certainly massive censorship there. But somebody inside of our own government at the FBI would have had the optics on the laptop and also on the fact that all of these briefings were going on for big tech. Somebody knew that the FBI was falsely briefing big tech, arguing that it was Russian disinformation when the laptop was 100% real. Shouldn't we know who that was or what group of people that was, considering they are actually the puppet masters here?
Absolutely. And, in the lawsuit, when I was Attorney General, we filed the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit last May, and we took the deposition of Anthony Fauci, and in addition to him having the court reporter put a mask on when she sneezed, I'm not making that up, that actually happened. 2.5 years later, that happened. But in addition to that, it became very clear whatever Fauci said, big tech censored. But we also, Clay, took the deposition of Elvis Chan, who is right in the middle of all of this. And he was the FBI agent in Northern California briefing these big tech platforms, some of the biggest companies in the history of the world with that immense power that they have, knowing that they had the laptop in December of late 2019.
Do we know that? I guess that's my question. Do we know that he was aware of all of the details on that laptop?
Yeah, well, I don't know about exact details, but certainly the FBI had the laptop, right? And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It could have been his boss, Eric, who was saying
listen, this is Clay. We definitely need to go further. I'm not suggesting at all that it's just Elvis Chan. We need that. And by the way, when people on the left complain about these sort of hearings, this is exactly what Congress, they can walk and chew gum and pass meaningful legislation for working families. We should do that also. But also a very important function is to hold these people accountable, because it's more than just one FBI agent. They made a conscious decision to tell people that wasn't, that they knew wasn't true, that this was accurate. There was a Hunter Biden laptop, and then telling people, look out for this. This is going to be Russian disinformation. You've got the Twitter guys saying they referenced specifically the Hunter Biden laptop. That is the tip of the iceberg. They were having weekly censorship meetings. They had a special portal. So yes, we need to get not just at the big tech companies. We need to get at the government folks who were involved in this, who think it's their job to tell the American people what they can think and what they can hear and what they can say. So the Ministry of Truth, this effort, we got to unravel all of it, because that's the kind of reform I think the American people expect if they believe in the First Amendment, and I do.
Surely. There's a puppet master somewhere in the FBI who knew that laptop was real and may well have been telling these FBI agents, you still need to be going and having all these big tech briefings. How was that decision made? Who made it? That, to me, is the essence of the question that I think we need to know the answer to the most. Much less serious. I am out in Phoenix. You now represent Missouri. I am betting on the Kansas City Chiefs to win this Super Bowl, which I imagine would make you happy. What do you expect to see? And given the fact that you probably want to be reelected in Missouri, how much are the Chiefs going to beat the Eagles by?
I'm going to say by a touchdown. I just think the offense is too potent. I mean, Mahomes is so creative. He can beat you a bunch of different ways. Now, obviously, Philadelphia's got a quarterback that can do the same thing, but Mahomes is seasoned. This is not his first rodeo. They've got a lot of weapons, and I think that defense steps up. And the Philadelphia defense is good, but I think this is the Chiefs here. They've just proven they've been very consistent with their offensive production. I don't see any real reason why that's going to slow down in the Super Bowl. So you're a smart man. I've always believed that you're a smart man, and so that's a good bet.
Hey, if I get Mahomes plus the points, I'm taking him every time. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Chiefs fans are lucky to have him, and I think they're lucky to have you as one of their senators from Missouri. Congratulations on the election. Appreciate you making the time for us.
Anytime, my friend. Take care.
It's Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt. He's doing fantastic work for people from the Show Me State, and I hope Patrick Mahomes, unfortunately, if you're an Eagles fan, you're not going to like this, will show them that he is the boss come Sunday, because I've got money on Mahomes and the Chiefs. I want to tell you about this. Look, not everybody out there, doesn't matter who you are, nobody's immune from the threat of online identity theft, silent crime, one that oftentimes goes unnoticed. Most of the time what happens is cyber hacker breaks into a company's database, makes off with some or all of the customer's data, valuable stuff, names, addresses, social security numbers. They hit the jackpot, and you just got to be careful. You don't know when your information circulating on the dark web. If you got LifeLock's identity theft protection, you've got a head start on all of this. LifeLock systems will monitor billions of online transactions looking for evidence of wrongdoing. When they spot it, they're in touch with you. If they discover you've been a victim, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but it's easy to help protect yourself with LifeLock. Join now and save 25% off your first year with the promo code CLAY. Again, head to LifeLock.com. Use that promo code CLAY for 25% off. LifeLock.com. Promo code CLAY. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Good conversation there with Eric Schmidt, Senator from Missouri, surrounding the big tech collusion and more, just coming out of a classified briefing on the Chinese spy balloon. Reports out there that the Chinese spy balloons were used, spoiler alert, because they're far more effective than satellites, and I would presume that they are likely to continue going forward. We've got a lot of people who want to weigh in on the first couple of hours of the program. Reminder, my good buddy Buck Sexton is on his honeymoon. He'll be out for the rest of this week and all of next week as he celebrates that. Congratulations to both he and Carrie. Let's take some of these calls. Gary in northern Arizona. What you got for me, Gary?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Lifer in the military, retired. Back when 9/11 happened, there was a new surge of patriotism like we'd never seen in years prior to that. Even a lot of the theme parks were given free admission to active duty retired vets. Right now, with what I've seen happening with Disneyland, if they gave me a family package, I'd tear it up, set it on fire, send it back to them, whatever. I wouldn't. I mean, Disney used to be wholesome. You knew if they came out with something that it was for the whole family. And now they're just the opposite. They're this part of this woke movement, which is just filth in the United States and throughout the country, the rest of the world. I don't know. I don't know what else to say other than that.
Thank you for the call. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the service. And I think increasingly there's a lot of people out there that would agree with you, which is why I would say if you're fed up with what Disney is doing, cancel your Disney Plus subscriptions. You don't have to do it for a long time. 6 months. They start to get the message. You can come back. I think one of the challenges of the business of streaming in general, though, is that a lot of people are realizing, hey, I can pay $11 a month, watch everything that I want for 6 months, and then cancel. And so they're realizing that they're not the annuity that they had hoped they were. People don't sign up for years at a time like they have historically for cable and satellite services. Tony in Orlando, Florida, where Disney World itself is located. What's up, Tony?
Hello there.
How are you doing?
How you doing? I'm good. Great to be on the show. I wanted to tell you, you guys are consistently great on a daily basis, and I wanted to give props to Buck on his upcoming nuptials and wish her well.
It just happened on Saturday, and he is on his honeymoon right now. So I appreciate the feedback, and certainly we're trying to endeavor to live up as best we can to the legacy Rush put in place here for this show every single day. So we appreciate hearing that you're enjoying it.
Well, thank you. I'm a daily listener, but I was trying to listen. I can't listen all 3 hours all the time because I got to work, whatnot. But
yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
I ended up thinking about this, though, and it's really strange. I was thinking why Biden wouldn't have an expert hazmat spacesuit wearing, because this is the future already. We're in, and there's lots of stuff going on, at Space Force and everything. Why wouldn't he have a super grappling hook, take this big balloon into space out of the atmosphere? Because there could be some kind of toxins put in there and mist through the world, and it's like ricin or anthrax or whatever. It's like, what's going on here, man?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the call. Look, that was one of the things that we said on the show about the Chinese spy balloon the minute this story went public. When they said, oh, we're afraid of shooting it down over occupied territory, potentially having somebody be injured on the ground. So that just didn't add up because there's huge parts of the United States that have absolutely no substantial population, right? So the odds of, for instance, if you shot this thing down over Alaska, particularly right when it's entered into our airspace, there are lots of places all over Alaska where this Chinese spy balloon would have landed and done almost no problems. Same thing, by the way, if there was something toxic or dangerous about what was inside of that balloon. You want to do it, knock it down where there's nobody around. And it just didn't add up. Even the decision to shoot this down in the Atlantic Ocean right after it left the coast of South Carolina still doesn't add up, because if there was actual danger associated with shooting it down, it wouldn't have been much safer to do it over water than it would have been over Alaska in the first place. So I think this is an example, unfortunately, of Joe Biden not being able to handle situations without precedent because his mental faculties are not strong enough. Speaking of mental faculties not being strong enough, John Fetterman, the newest senator from Pennsylvania, he's in the hospital right now already. We'll tell you about it next. Clay Travis Buck Sexton Show, hour number 3, Thursday edition from the Valley of the Sun out here in Phoenix. I'll be here today, tomorrow, and Monday. Super Bowl going on here. And I love this town, have met many of you out there listening. Appreciate them hosting me here in Phoenix, where, by the way, the Clay and Buck Show is the #1 radio show in the entire city, one of many places out there where that is the case. Buck Sexton out for the rest of this week and next week on his honeymoon. And so we wish the best to he and Carrie, but I'll be manning the ship and trying to keep us from running aground too often in the rest of this week and all of next week as well. Joe Biden presently speaking to the American public right now. The numbers are out on his State of the Union address. It was the second smallest audience to watch a State of the Union address in 30 years. The only one that was smaller was Joe Biden's first address, which technically was right after he was coming into office, when only 26.9 million people watched him speak then. Just 27.3 million watched on Tuesday, meaning that regardless of what Joe Biden said, it was unlikely to be a persuasive speech. But I think it's important to recognize two things. One, Joe Biden is going to run in 2024. And two, as cognitively impaired and likely to get far worse as Joe Biden is, he's 80 now. He would be 82 for the election of a second term, and he would be 86 years old when he finishes the term completely. And I was out last night with some friends in Phoenix, and one of those friends came up and he said, "Clay, love the show." I always like to hear that. And he said to somebody in the media business out also for the Super Bowl, he said, "I just have one question for you. Can you please mention it on the radio tomorrow? Why do we not have upper end age limits for people to hold office?" We've had this conversation on the show before, and I do think it's a really fascinating one, because if you think about it from a constitutional perspective, the reason why, and his point was, we have a lower end age limit, right? You have to be 35 years old to be elected president of the United States. And, a lot of people out there right now, you don't really think about why the lower end age limits existed, because 35 is young, but it's not insanely young, right? And the stair step, House of Representatives, I believe, is 26. And then I think the Senate is 30 or whatever it is. And then obviously the presidency, you have to be 35 years old. And the answer there, historically, to a large degree, our founding fathers wanted to keep someone from having an elective office and being able to hand it off to someone so young that they were the default, even if they weren't in office. Continuation, right? You didn't want to end up with a situation where a president could serve for a couple of terms, and then the president could decide to make his 18-year-old son the president of the United States, where it's a default continuation of a presidency going on and forward. It was an idea to try, I think, to combat dynastic genealogy, which was one of the things that they were fighting against here in the United States compared to the legacy of European power. So that makes some sense. I also think there was this idea that, by and large, people didn't live that long in the 1700s. So I think, and I know Benjamin Franklin was old during the Constitutional Convention and all of that, and during the Revolution, there certainly were elderly individuals. But a lot of the founding fathers were really pretty young when they were out battling for American independence, in their 20s and their 30s, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I don't believe many of them contemplated that we would be in a situation where an 85-year-old guy would be the president of the United States. Or, frankly, we'd have a Speaker of the House over 80. I mean, we really do have a very elderly ruling class. And I think that becomes important when you consider, it doesn't matter to Democrats. They've made the calculated decision that Joe Biden is going to be their nominee in 2024. And it doesn't matter what his health condition is, by and large. It doesn't matter how addled he is, how incapable of actually responding on his feet, how he can't make decisions that are important if there's not a long-range precedent in play, such as what happened we just saw with the Chinese spy balloon. But if you were out there and you thought to yourself, Democrats are going to have one bit of an iota of caring about the cognitive abilities of the person who is our commander-in-chief, the person who is the ultimate decider, if you thought that they were going to, even for a moment, consider that it might be unacceptable to put somebody of Joe Biden's clear cognitive deficiencies in the Oval Office for another 4 years, John Fetterman is now a senator from Pennsylvania. And this is not getting a lot of attention because it ties in with what Buck and I told you, with what many of you out there knew would happen. I hope he's okay, and I hope he gets out. But John Fetterman is currently hospitalized with a health condition. They don't know exactly what it is. There was fear that he might have had another stroke. It does not appear that he's had a stroke. But as anybody who watched this campaign in Pennsylvania, as anyone who watched the debate between Fetterman and Dr. Oz knew this man, John Fetterman, was not capable of doing the job for which he was elected. He has not even made it a full month without having to be hospitalized. 6-year term that he has in the Senate, he couldn't even make it a full month without being hospitalized. This is a report. Let me make sure that I get this right about who is out there making this discussion. This is Samantha Manning, a Pittsburgh local news reporter, giving an update outside of the hospital. This was a little bit over 30 minutes ago on John Fetterman.
Senator John Fetterman's staff says they drove him here to GW Hospital yesterday after the senator said he was feeling lightheaded. He had been attending the Senate Democratic retreat when he wasn't feeling well, and that's when staff members drove him over here to the hospital. Now, his office tells us that initial testing does not show signs of a new stroke, but they did keep him here overnight, and they are continuing to run more tests and had him under observation. His staff tells us the senator is in good spirits and has been talking to family and his staff members.
So, okay, that's great. He's in good spirits. I hope that he's able to leave the George Washington University Hospital and he's going to be fine. He couldn't make it a month. John Fetterman was in such decrepit physical health that he couldn't make it a month without being checked into the hospital. If you raised his health condition as an issue, Democrats attacked you for having the gall to raise any issues at all about whether John Fetterman was able to do this job. They did. They said it was unacceptable to even ask those questions. He couldn't make it a month without needing to be checked into a hospital. And they were afraid that he had another stroke. Now, they're running, like the report there said, a battery of tests to try to figure out why he felt the need to be checked into the hospital. But if you're a Pennsylvanian right now, it's important to have a senator who can advocate for your positions. Being healthy enough to do the job is the number one most important attribute that anybody who is elected has to have. This, to me, though, is a perfect representation of what they will do with Joe Biden. Biden is not healthy enough to be president now. It is reckless and indefensible to put him up for election again in 2024. He can barely travel around the country. He can't speak hardly at all off of the teleprompter. He can't answer questions. He didn't know what to do when a Chinese spy balloon suddenly showed up. He's Fetterman. Joe Biden is Fetterman. Yet if you question Joe Biden's fitness, just wait for this. There's going to be a substantial number of people out there soon carrying water for Joe Biden, arguing that this is an unacceptable line of questioning, that asking the single most essential question of any political candidate, are you physically healthy enough to do the job, not permitted. And if you believe that there's going to be anyone out there in the Democrat Party who is willing to actually do what should happen, right? Biden should step down at the end of this term. And he should say, I'm too old to continue as president. I don't have the physical wherewithal or capabilities to do this job, which is one of the most difficult jobs in the world, with the utmost vigor and health that is necessary. And so we're going to have an open primary and Democrats can nominate someone new. That's what he should do. That's what someone who truly cared about the country would do. It's not Joe Biden. It's not Democrats. They don't want an open primary. They don't want a battle. They believe that Joe Biden is the most likely candidate in the Democrat Party to win in 2024, so nothing else matters. Every other factor is gone. It's erased. And Fetterman, we told you on this show, we said, look, this guy is not able to do the job. He's really unhealthy. And if, frankly, his family cared about him, and if the Democrats in Pennsylvania cared about him, and if the Democrats nationally cared about him, they wouldn't heap upon the shoulders of a clearly unhealthy man an incredibly difficult job as a United States Senator for the next 6 years. I would be stunned beyond belief if John Fetterman is able to do this job for 6 years. I'm not sure he's going to make it a year before there's going to have to be an appointment of someone to replace him. It was reckless. It was indefensible. Whether you loved everything about him or not, Dr. Oz would have been a very good senator for Pennsylvania. He can do the job. His job has been for a living to communicate with people. Yet Democrats dragged John Fetterman across the finish line because they were unwilling to acknowledge that what they were doing was reckless. And it is a perfect example of what they will do with Joe Biden in 2024 as well. As we roll through the third hour of the program, 800-282-2882, I'm going to open up the phone lines. I'm also going to play for you a clip that, frankly, I heard and I could not believe of what was being said about Marjorie Taylor Greene by Democrat consultant operative James Carville in the wake of the Tuesday night State of the Union address. If you haven't heard this clip, you're going to be, I think, utterly disgusted. We'll talk about it next. We roll through the Thursday edition of the program. As always, encourage you to go subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you don't miss a single moment. I mentioned for you at the top of the hour that the State of the Union was the smallest basically in 30 years, the next to smallest for Joe Biden. And I also would encourage you to keep in mind that therefore any impact, although there are several different studies out there that suggested in the immediate aftermath, I should say polls that suggested in the immediate aftermath, that there was not in any way a substantial impact. Joe Biden delivered the worst State of the Union speech in 25 years. According to a poll that was released by CNN, which obviously is not necessarily designed to appeal to Republicans, only 34% of people who watched the speech reacted very positively to Biden's speech. This is a quote from the poll, the lowest in CNN's speech reaction polls dating back to 1998. So it's hard to believe that Joe Biden has moved the lever or moved the argument sphere in any way based on what he said in that State of the Union address. But didn't stop James Carville from going on MSNBC, I believe that it was, and going after Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman from Georgia, for her behavior during the speech. Listen.
Well, I told people I have a PhD in white trashology. And you saw real white trash on display. And let me say something about Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She dresses like white trash. She really needs a fashion consultant. Could I recommend George Santos? He could do a good job of dressing up where she doesn't announce her white trashdom by her own clothes.
Look, James Carville's from Louisiana. Ragin' Cajun, helped to get Bill Clinton elected to the White House. But going on MSNBC and calling Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash based on the clothes that she wears, even for MSNBC, that's pretty indefensible. And what's also interesting about this is in our speech codes, if James Carville says anything about any other race in America, that derogatory, based on anything that they're wearing, Asian, Hispanic, black, he gets immediately canceled. Why in the world is it okay? Look, you can say, look, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you're James Carville, I think her behavior during the State of the Union was unacceptable. By the way, I don't, because if you look at Parliament in England for hundreds of years, reacting to things that are said during a speech as opposed to sitting basically in stone-faced derision, doesn't make a big deal to me. And when you're constantly having people stand and cheer you during the course of a speech, the idea that there is no reaction to the speech is just out the window. Basically what you're saying is you can only cheer, you can't boo. Well, what kind of standard are we setting there then? You're only allowed to support what the president says. You're not allowed to reject what the president says. I think it's very important for the president to see that everybody doesn't agree with his agenda, because when you're in the White House bubble, sometimes you lose track of what the larger American public thinks. So a speech in front of actual audience that has people who like and dislike you is actually very rare. Most presidents only speak to their favored constituency. But if you're going to say, oh, you're allowed to stand and cheer for the president, but you aren't allowed to boo or react to the president, I just don't agree with that precedent in general. But If James Carville wanted to go out and attack Marjorie Taylor Greene for that, I would say that's a very valid perspective. You shouldn't react to the president. You shouldn't call him a liar. Okay, you can make that argument. But to go after Marjorie Taylor Greene because of her outfit and to call her white trash? I heard this clip and I couldn't believe that James Carville went on MSNBC and said it. I just really couldn't. Now, I live in the South. That's one of the most denigrating things you could say about a white person, to call them white trash. And oftentimes, frankly, what you're doing in that scenario, James Carville, is judging someone based on their economic status. Because one of the things when you call somebody white trash, usually the insult also includes poor white trash. You can't afford to dress yourself as well as you should. You weren't able to go and get as good of an education as you should have gotten. It's incredibly denigrating, and I think it is a sign of how the Democrat Party in general has become the party of woke, white, overeducated people. And you wonder how you're losing people who have jobs where they have to go out and sometimes get grit under their fingernails, people who have to work for a living. Well, those people are all voting Republican now because of the denigration that's coming out from people like James Carville, who's calling Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash. Welcome to MSNBC. Small business owners, there may well be a refund in your future from the IRS. If your business has 5 or more employees, manage to make it through COVID and big-time inflation, you could be eligible to receive a payroll tax rebate of up to $26,000 per employee. Important to note, not a loan, no payback, just a refund of your taxes. And it's a refund of your taxes that will be uncovered by many highly trained tax specialists. Tax attorneys will get you hooked up. They can help you to get back your own money. Doesn't cost you anything. They'll share a percentage of the proceeds. They've already returned over $3 billion to businesses. They can help you as well. Just go to getrefunds.com, click on Qualify Me, answer a few questions. Payroll tax refund only available for a limited amount of time. Don't miss out. Go to getrefunds.com. No risk, high reward. Getrefunds.com. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We got a lot of people who want to weigh in, giving you a little bit of an early preview. We're going to take a bunch of calls tomorrow, have some fun on Friday going into the weekend. Super Bowl on the horizon. I'm out here in Phoenix. Encourage you to go subscribe to the podcast. We've had a lot of fun today. A lot of deep dives. We talked about the Twitter hearings, why they matter at the top of the second hour. Disney versus Ron DeSantis. I think a really interesting discussion that we had in the first hour of the program. You can go subscribe to the podcast and you can go check out any segment. Zoom ahead. You can also go check out clayandbuck.com for a recitation of what's going on there as well, including some of the crazy woke Disney programming that is being directed towards your children. Let's go. Let's have some fun here with the calls. Brian in North Carolina, you want to talk about the first man and Dr. Jill Biden's near makeout session. I thought he was going to slip her some tongue there for a minute, and I wanted to know where his hands were. I'm going to be honest with you. That was a pretty aggressive greeting up there at the State of the Union.
Well, listen, man, I am a fan of you guys. I'm just so grateful for you taking this time slot. And I feel bad for your co-host. Had that wedding been after the State of the Union, perhaps he could have gotten some really good intel on how to plant such a passionate smooch, in the moment, because I've never seen anything like that. And think about this. The president's wife mouth kissed the vice president's husband. Like, what kind of sentence is that? It's wild, man. It was wild.
Thanks for the call. If you missed that, early on we had some fireworks in the State of the Union. Dr. Jill Biden, it's important to remember that she's a doctor. She's probably an expert in kissing. She went in for a kiss with Doug Elmhoff. I think this is how you pronounce his name, the first gentleman, Kamala Harris's husband. And I really think, I don't know where his hands were. His intentions or her intentions seemed quite improper to me. I don't know if he slipped tongue. I don't know if she slipped tongue. It was an aggressive kiss. Really funny, too. That one of the biggest storylines coming out of the State of the Union, Dr. Jill Biden and the first gentleman making out like a couple of teenagers in the House chambers. It's funny. It's ridiculous. Yeah, and I saw, by the way, right before Buck left, he got into a discussion. I saw him share this on social media with Carol Markowitz, who is fantastic, writes for the New York Post, about whether women should wear fancy shoes or not out in public. I was a little bit disappointed in Buck. He was like, just wear shoes that aren't that nice. It doesn't matter. And all these women out there in media are they're jumping on Buck like crazy. Not the way that the first gentleman jumped on Jill Biden, but they're jumping on Buck like crazy. And they're telling him, look, whatever pain comes from wearing uncomfortable shoes is worth it to look great. And so Buck is I think he's fighting a losing battle here. I don't think you go after women in their shoes. Maybe something that he's going to learn now as a married man. We got a bunch of callers. Chuck in Kentucky. What you got for us, Chuck?
Yeah, Buck. Sorry, Trey. That deal.
You're 0 for 2, but I know who you're talking to.
Gotcha. That kiss you're talking about. Just look, there'll be a new Swiner law coming down the road next, and on the deal about Marjorie Greene, she's a true patriot, and this idiot that thinks that he's part of the swamp trying to destroy our country, and that's who we got to get. We've got to get, like you said, we got to find out the leader who's controlling all these people that's trying to destroy America.
Yeah, look, thanks for the call. The FBI, we got to figure out who the puppet master is, as I've been talking out throughout this show. You can criticize Marjorie Taylor Greene for a lot. That's what our government is involved in. That's what the marketplace of ideas is. If you think she's really dumb when it comes to tax policy, weigh in on tax policy. If you don't like the fact that she called Joe Biden a liar, weigh in on calling her and say, hey, I don't think that was appropriate decorum for a State of the Union. You can make those arguments. But for James Carville to go on and just say she's white trash and she dresses like white trash, and you wonder why you are losing people who work for a living. There's a lot of white people out there in the Midwest looking around like, man, that's what the Democrats really believe? That if I don't side along with Joe Biden, you're going to call me white trash? I mean, that's just the next step from calling you racist, right? Which is what they said when Donald Trump won in 2016. Rochelle in Wisconsin, what do you think about John Fetterman's health?
I think he's got a lot of issues, and thank you for taking my phone call. I think my opinion is that the Democrats wanted Fetterman all along. That was their plan because there are a lot of people there that want to do the job for him.
Yeah.
And they knew they can get him elected.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Rochelle. I think, look, there is a good chance, and I think it's unfortunate, but when you consider that senators have 6-year terms, and this guy couldn't even make it a month without having to check himself into the hospital, I think there's a very good chance that he's going to have to be replaced as a senator, and that the people of Pennsylvania are not going to have a duly elected member of the Senate that they chose. And that's why I consider it to be one of the most significant failures of our democratic process that Pennsylvania elected John Fetterman. They did. He won by 4 points. Dr. Oz was a really good candidate that lost by 4 points. Was there a chance that someone else, Kathy Barnett, could have won that Republican nomination, maybe beaten John Fetterman? I don't think so. I think it would have been so hard because the governor candidate, I believe, Mastriano, lost by 14 points to Shapiro. So you were asking for an awful lot of people to split their ticket, and we just weren't able to do it in Pennsylvania. And as a result, indefensibly, we now have John Fetterman in as the senator for the next 6 years, and it's a job that he's not healthy enough to take. Jerry in El Paso, Texas. What you got for me, Jerry? Thanks for listening.
Sure. Yes, sir. I want to know why there's no forgiveness from all these CEOs and stuff like from Disney. That war happened. Slavery hasn't been in the United States over 160 years ago, but they're still blaming us. And my families, all of them, came over on the boats afterwards. Why are you blaming us for that? You know,
that's a great point.
In a good book, forgive and you shall be forgiven.
Thank you for the call. And for those of you who missed it, this crazy woke programming that is coming out for Disney blaming white people, a huge percentage of white people in this country are descended from people who were not even here when the Civil War happened. A huge percentage of white people in this country are descended from people who fought for the North in the Civil War and may have given their lives to end slavery. So this idea that there is a need for reparations, which is what Disney is arguing in children's programming, I might add, is particularly toxic and noxious to me. That's why I was saying to start the show, I think you have to take a serious look. If you're a parent or a grandparent, you're subscribed to Disney Plus, I think you have to take a serious look whether Disney deserves your money based on the programming that they are putting out for your kids. This is not the Disney of the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s that was designed to appeal to everyone. This is the toxic, woke Disney culture. And I think the reason why this happens, this is my theory on a larger scale. You said, why won't these CEOs forgive it? I think that the CEOs aren't doing what's in the best interest of the companies. I think they're doing what's in the best interest of the CEO's continued employment. What I mean by that is, if you're the CEO of Disney and you go to war internally with the woke culture that exists there, you might lose your job. You really might, because that woke culture inside of these companies is so powerful. Remember, they went after Bob Chapek for just saying, hey, I don't want to get involved in this Florida education bill. We're in 50 states. It's not that big of a deal. And they said to Bob Chapek, that's unacceptable. And eventually he weighed in, I think, to the detriment of Disney, because most people were on Ron DeSantis' side. But these companies are being run by often white guys who are so afraid of being called racist or not listening enough to the diversity and inclusion experts, not being empathetic enough to their feelings, that they don't do what's in the best interest of the company, which is to appeal to everyone and just create great content. They do what's in the best interest of their continued employment. And there's oftentimes a very big difference between those two. You want to keep making, if you're the CEO of Disney, $50 million a year for years into the future. The best way to avoid internal struggle in their mind is not to create a struggle with the diversity and inclusion wokeocrats that have basically taken over inside of these companies. And so that's why they send out all these emails about diversity, inclusion, because they're trying to avoid being the targets of the people inside of their company. And I think that's such an important, significant aspect that you have to understand where this is coming from. It's indisputably awful for Disney's business to be demanding reparations and saying white people are awful in your programming. Indisputably bad. Doesn't gain anything, creates a lot of alienation. But if Bob Iger comes out and says we can't have programming like this, then he's the new target. He's the awful white guy in charge who won't allow the people who are diverse and inclusive, even though, let's be honest, the number one rule of diversity and inclusion is they're actually less tolerant than anyone, right? That's the incredible irony about this. They tolerate anything except disagreement with them, in which case you're racist, sexist, homophobic, you don't deserve to have an opinion, don't deserve to have a job. That's the foundation of cancel culture. So they've created these ideologues inside of the companies, and many of the people running the companies are every day just trying to do their best not to be the targets themselves. And as a result, the company ends up not making the best decisions for the company. It's all about keeping the CEO in his job as opposed to being the best steward of the company that you can possibly be. And I think Disney is a perfect example of what happens when you allow that woke, as I've called them, the Trojan horse contingent in under these diversity inclusion mandates, and they, in the process, destroy the underlying business that you've spent decades creating brand awareness and strength with. I want to tell you, Michigan has a lot going for it, including all that's happening in the small college town of Hillsdale. That's where Hillsdale College was founded nearly 180 years ago. Their mission then and today is to defend our nation's freedoms. They do that in any number of ways, including educating their students and all of us. They do the latter with a series of video courses available to you online. Each one's free. Hillsdale's professors and administrators, they have a love for learning and a love for teaching. And that's apparent in every one of these video courses available on demand for free. You'll see it when you check them out. Whether you want to dig deep into the understanding of the Constitution, American history, or master knowledge on the great authors of our time, Hillsdale College has 30-some-odd courses to choose from. So go visit clayandbuckforhillsdale.com today. Pick one of these courses. No grading, no time limits. Just enjoy them for your own love of learning at clayandbuckforhillsdale.com. Get more educated in 2023 by going to clayandbuckforhillsdale.com and starting these free courses today, clayandbuckforhillsdale.com. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. As always, go download, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you don't miss a single moment. Lots of unique, fun podcast exclusives also in there. And I want to tell you, if your phone service with Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T, you're spending too much money every month, maybe $50 or $60 too much, you can get the same level of service from Pure Talk, a company proudly employing a great U.S.-based customer service team and their veteran-owned cell phone service, as good as any out there, for half the cost. Get hooked up now. When you switch, it'll only take 10 minutes. Plus, first month risk-free guarantee. Try it. If you're not completely happy, you'll get your money back. Support a company who supports you. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. A lot of you want to weigh in to close out the show. A variety of different calls out there. Let's go to Warner in Tennessee. Warner, where in Tennessee are you?
I'm in Dyersburg, Clay, about 20 miles from the Mississippi River.
All right. What you got for me here?
Well, I wanted to ask you a very important question. Now, let me frame it by saying that both of these guys would look perfectly at home coming out of Medusa's head. But who looks more like a snake, that boy down there on the bayou, Carville, or Mel Kiper at ESPN?
Oh, that's funny. Thanks for the call, by the way, Warner. We're talking about James Carville because he called Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash because of the clothes that she wore. And I'm going to say Carville looks more like a snake. I mean, he looks a little bit like a serpent if you look at him. I think when you call somebody white trash, it's fair to say, you know what, you look like a snake. And I'm surprised Carville in particular would make this error because he's a Southerner and he should know better than anybody that what has happened in the South is you basically have lost anybody that works for a living if you're in the Democrat Party and you don't live in the middle of a deep blue city. And I know Rush used to call Carville Serpent Head. But what an arrogant thing to say when you are claiming, and I've seen Carville come out and say, we got to stop, and to his credit, he's right about this. He's like, we got to stop being so woke. We got to stop talking like we live in faculty lounges. And then you're going to go call Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash? I mean, it's just incredibly elitist of James Carville. And this is a guy who got Bill Clinton elected back in 1992 and again reelected in 1996 by winning a lot of poor white people all over the country, but particularly the South. Bill Clinton won Tennessee. He won Arkansas. He won Georgia. He won lots of states with a lot of poor white people in them. Bill Clinton himself used to be a poor white guy. I bet James Carville's been a poor white guy at some point. Guess what? I've been a poor white guy in the South. Saying that somebody is poor white trash and they dress like poor white trash, which is essentially what James Carville said. He's telling on himself, and he's telling on his party when they're saying that about Marjorie Taylor Greene. What they're telling you is they don't respect you. And they wouldn't say it about anybody other than a white person. Wouldn't say it about a Hispanic person. Wouldn't say it about a black person. Wouldn't say it about an Asian person. They would only say it about a white person. You know what? People are listening. And every single day, this show's audience is growing, and the Democrat Party's audience is shrinking. Appreciate y'all. Talk to you tomorrow.